Siri is getting in on the action. Shut up, shut up, Siri.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. How's it going?
Hello.
Thank you for.
Hi guys, how are you doing?
Thanks for joining us again, Artie and Helen. Joining us. Thank you to the audience for joining me, Artie and Helen. We have a very kind of what's the word?
Scrumtralescent.
I meant timely thing today, because we're talking about sport, and we have some brilliant people coming in. In fact, we have someone who's already in. Sorry, I'm just turning on my lights here. We have someone who's already in, Beth Seltzer, and Beth is going to join us early because she is also attending a hearing on Zoom. So we're going to bring her in a second and just catch up with.
Beth is so exciting because she's always at hearings defending women's sport. She's like a super agent.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, you know what? Let's just bring her in. Let's just bring her in because I'm worried we're going to lose her. Hi, Beth. How are you?
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Beth.
Lovely to see you, Beth. Explain to us what's going on at the moment that means that...
So at the moment, I was invited to the Pennsylvania House Education Committee hearing, which happened to kind of get scheduled around this time. These hearings always are very short notice and always get moved around. So I'm logged into both at the same time, but I'm not scheduled to testify for a little bit. So here I am. Thank you for squeezing me on early.
Oh, thank you for joining us. You're actually a weightlifter yourself, or you were a weightlifter. Is that right?
Well, I'm a power lifter. The moves are a little bit differently, but we all throw heavy shit around, basically.
Okay, good. The first thing, I think I'm going to make a habit of doing this for our guests, our female guests. But first of all, can I apologize on behalf of me and Artie for you having to do this at all? It is an absolute disgrace that you have to.
It's absurd that I have to do this, even, right?
Yeah, it's a waste of your time. It's a waste of your energies. Just to get back to fairness and this. I mean, I have to say, I thought the day Laurel Hubbard lifted was such a slap in the face for women. I can't believe it happened. How are you feeling about it?
There's varying emotions. I mean, I knew this day was coming for a while. It was pretty crazy how it all unfolded, and that Laurel ended up not even qualifying to finish. Is that intentional? Was that not? There's all sorts of conspiracies, but I'm just rolling with, it's just raising awareness at least. And that's half my battle, is a lot of people don't realize that this is going on, or the threat just that allowing a few males in is that it's a huge floodgate we can't open. And the few ones that have taken female titles, there's no asterisk by their name on the record board to show future generations of females that it was a male body that set that record, not that they're not training hard enough as a female.
Yeah.
That's an excellent way of putting it, I think.
You see that a lot in news reports, like the Metro newspaper reported that Chris Kahn guy, who and I'm sorry if you're only hearing about this story now, but sexually assaulted his 96-year-old grandmother.
79, yeah.
79, sorry.
Yeah. 79.
And they reported it as a woman who had sex with her grandmother. So there seems to be, as well as this push for an expansion of male rights, simultaneously an effort to hide the fact that it's happening. Would you say?
Yeah, it's so hard to record this. It's so hard to even know how big of a problem it is, because they're just trying to hide any statistics.
With conflation of language, and this is all branches to the same tree is what we're getting at, right? And that's the erasure of women is what is happening.
Mm-hmm. So how have you been fighting it over there, Beth, for people who aren't familiar with your activism?
Oh, as we sometimes say in Minnesota, oofda. I don't know where to start. basically the last 6 months, I've been traveling the nation trying to testify for these bills that are popping up in response to basically Biden's administration erasing women's rights. And that kind of started for me on International Women's Day when he issued an executive order that inserted gender identity into Title IX. And we haven't even had Title IX, which some of your followers might not know is the law in the United States that helps protect our equal opportunities. It basically erased that. So there's no definition anymore. And here we are. So at least states can try to fight back.
Yeah. What would you say is the greatest obstacle to being heard at the moment? I mean, it seems to me that 99% of people agree with us on this matter.
Well, certainly. Well, awareness, because the media, cancel culture, that sort of thing. And the same with that is people are scared to speak up. I have athletes that are basically bluntly told, shut up and be nice, or get off the team, or we're not going to sponsor you, or you're going to lose your job if you don't shut up. You can't be a coach anymore, that sort of thing. It's real. It's happening. We see it every day. I get death threats for this. I mean, you just have to laugh because it is absurd. Like, really? For trying to just preserve fairness? You would think if these people truly felt like women, they could be in our shoes and feel why we're fighting and just stop this nonsense. But we know that this is just alternative motives of this ideology just pushing anywhere they can.
Yeah. And what did you think of the wonderful moment yesterday when the weightlifters were asked for their opinion of Laurel Hubbard?
Wasn't that something? Hashtag no thank you. May that spread far and wide and go viral. Simple and elegant. That's all we need to be. That's all it should need to be is a no thanks. As I've said in my testimony, I've ended before. I am a woman here saying no. Why is that not enough?
Yeah. I mean, like the people who are pushing gender ideology, like 20 years ago, they would have been pushing no means no. They seem to have forgotten that principle.
It like I said before, absurd. That's about the only word that I can come up with some days, because it creeps into every corner of your life when you really wake up to it. And it's really time for people to start fighting back, because it's a matter of losing everything for women. And this goes far beyond women's rights too. Sex-based rights can extend to males and females, you know.
Yeah. Any other
I think sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. No, far away, Helen. I was going to ask you to.
Because I think there's, there's more here, I think, going on than just maybe right now, like a handful of male people being sort of chosen for the Olympics, say, instead of women. We've seen what happens in other areas here with the word woman being removed, whereas most people really don't want it to be or don't care. But the small amount of activism means that it's being removed, so pregnant people, etc., etc. And the worry that I see from this, a wider worry, is that I've already started seeing it, people saying, well, why do we have women's category? We should have like tall or weight categories, and we should remove women's categories. I'm worried that this will happen regardless, even though there's only a small number of male people who want this, I can see on a wider issue that people will start to say, well, why don't we just remove it anyway, because it's unfair or because it excludes. That I see that could be a big problem sort of going forward.
So why? So let's turn that into a question. Why are women's sports important, Beth? Why is it important to separate sports by sex?
I mean, we have women's sports for a reason. We couldn't keep up with the men. Let's face it. When you take the average woman and the average male, same weight, training capabilities, age, they're going to outperform the females. We got fed up. We started doing the women's Olympics because the men wouldn't let us. And here we are. We're just fighting for that spot again. And I see Helen and Helen's fears. And that's why we all need to stand up now and preserve what we have so it doesn't get to that point.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say, yeah, sorry, Helen. Yeah, far away, Helen.
No, you carry on.
all I was going to say was it's interesting that you talk about the average man and the average woman, because as a male weightlifter, Laurel Hubbard was in the middle of he's literally the most average of male weightlifters, and he's still got a place in the Olympics. It's extraordinary.
For him to come in and deny a spot to an Indigenous young woman, how shameful.
How shameful, yes.
Of Japan to even let this go on.
Yes, and how shameful as well that I just found out yesterday that the female weightlifting record for New Zealand has already been beaten by Laurel Hubbard.
Yeah. And speaking of those statistics like that, we have in America here in college athletics, a hurdler that was 200th at best, normally ranked in the 300th nationally as a male, took a season off to quote transition, came back and was the women's national champion. And then they're getting awards along the way, women's athlete of the week. You're so brave and courageous. And what is this telling women? Females, it's not just the elitists that need protection. It's women like me that in my 30s, I came across this hobby of powerlifting that helped empower me through some serious crap that I needed to deal with. Male violence, stalking, it helped me carry on after I miscarried. And it's so important to so many women to have these sex separated spaces, whether it be sports, locker rooms, hospital facilities. I can relate to it all, and it's just not fair.
Yes, no, that's right, because it
Very
actually,
well put.
this is my point. There's women's sports needs to be a protected category in a way that, and I've said this before, in a way that sort of tall people's sports or short people's sports doesn't need to be a protected category. Women's sports needs to be a protected categories for more than simple fairness. It's, for girls to have role models, for girls to learn leadership in an environment where they're not necessarily going to be talked over and shouted down. I think,
exactly, because personalities are
more to it.
As well as the bodies. And let's face it, most of these males have intact male bodies and those personalities to come along with it.
Yeah. About bodies, so there's an epidemic of young women and girls who are hating their bodies right now because there's so much hostility to women's bodies. And this is yet another way in which sport for women helps them get in touch with their bodies, master their bodies, and learn how incredibly extraordinary and powerful their own bodies are.
I'm a mother, and I still don't exactly know what the definition is of feeling like a woman, but getting in touch with my body and learning that through athletics really helped empower me and get in touch with that. And you're so right, Artie. And there's so many different differences. And now in this hearing, I'm trying to kind of overlap and keep track so I don't lose my spot. There's a male doctor of exercise science who is brave enough to mention menstruation. I mean, hello, pregnancy, menstruation, menopause. Like, is this not enough either? Why do I need to do this, you guys? I just want to encourage everyone out there, no matter what corner of the world you are in, to use your voice. I'm just a mom on a mission, and I've done so much. What can you do? What will you do to future generations?
I think it sounds like you're doing a whole bunch already. Can I just we'll finish up with you, but now Beth, because I'm worried that you're going to miss your spot because of us. So can we just finish by asking what can people do to support you in specifically, Beth? Because it looks like you're a key person to be supporting in America.
SaveWomenSports.com. You can find out how to donate, how to sign petitions, where to testify at. I have a Patreon too. Hit us up on all the social media, SaveWomenSports.com and at Beth Stelzer.
Okay, great. Well, listen, Beth, thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck at the hearing.
Bye.
Yes, bye.
See you again.
Lovely to see you again, Beth.
Oh, well, that was a nice, neat little interview before we even get going. So that's incredible. How are you guys doing?
Good. It was lovely to see Beth. She's such a lady.
What a force! What a powerful force! You know, she seems unstoppable. She's on a mission and she's doing it. That's just marvelous, isn't it?
Yeah.
I guess one. I mean, last week Helen someone pointed out in the comments that Helen Joyce, none of the guests will ever take my optimistic reading of things. And last week I was trying to say to Helen Joyce, oh, yeah, but it's energizing feminism. And she was like, no, it's all a load of silly shit that we shouldn't have to deal with. And she's absolutely right. She's absolutely right, you know. But at the same time, I think it's you know, I don't want to go again on that score, but while I will be apologizing to every fucking woman we speak to about this stuff, at the same time, I'm really glad it's getting such forceful, smart people into politics, engaging them. Hopefully, when the tide of shit has gone out again, you know, we'll have these people still in politics and still fighting for women. I think that can only be good.
Definitely. I do think some good has come out of it. I think there are a lot of women who have met other women who have really thought about what it means to be a woman in today's society, which they might not have if this hadn't come along. So, you know, you've got to find silver linings, and there's definitely a silver lining here, I think.
Yeah. Well, let's save the sports stuff till we go with Coach Blade. And who is our other guest again? My brain's
Catherine Deves.
Yes, Catherine Deves.
All the way from Australia.
So let's talk about Neil Gaiman. I just wanted to kind of say one thing about it. I reprinted our email exchange because he called me mentally ill, because I don't think that it's a good thing that young women are just, you know, having unnecessary double mastectomies and destroying their healthy bodies with puberty blockers. But I neglected. He pointed out that I neglected to leave out the last to include the last line I wrote to him, which was "Fuck you, you fucking monster." So I wanted to make sure that I only didn't put that in. I only did not put that in because I literally didn't think it was important, but I might amend it and make sure I put it in, because I do think he's a monster. I think he's an absolute unfeeling monster. And the fact that he cannot defend J.K. Rowling against... J.K. Rowling, let's remember, had a pipe bomb threat a few weeks ago, something that the Guardian, the media, all these, you know, left-wing media did not even talk about. And he can't bring himself to defend her from that. He's an absolute disgrace, a coward, and a hypocrite. So I just wanted to make that very clear.
I think trans activism really has made people sort of, I don't know, defend the indefensible, say the most extraordinary things, I think. And it's difficult to even try and understand why. I mean, his reaction seems to have been so over the top. I mean,
he doesn't have to do this.
That's all people need to say is, I certainly don't think that Terry Pratchett would believe this, but who knows? I mean, the whole argument is ridiculous. But I don't understand the extremeness of it. Like, I mean, I guess there's sort of doubling down and looking bad, and then having to defend your position and finding yourself a bit in the corner because you've said things that other people disagree with, and then you have to fight them, you know, and everything escalates. But to move to, I think you're mentally ill in such a way, which obviously isn't concern. It's a way of insulting you. It's a way of and using mental illness as an insult. I mean, the whole thing was incredibly distasteful.
And he can't answer the question. Look, here's the thing, right? Is it mentally ill to think that Eddie Izzard is a woman? I think it actually is. And I think that there is a wider societal mental illness at the moment that is made up of people who are either pretending to believe they think he's a woman, or are kind of going along with the pretense that he's a woman in a way that I think is actually very dangerous for people.
Oh, completely. It's just like
mental health. You know?
I mean, it's so hard to comprehend why Neil Gaiman would say what he's saying. And then you realize that it's because these sort of social norms are being turned on their heads. It's like a tragedy of manners. He thinks he's supposed to be going along with these liberal, virtuous things, even though they don't make sense. And because they don't make sense, he has to sort of be even more emphatic about them or something, or be even more hostile to people who are calling them out. It's really tragic.
Yes, I think that's it, isn't it? It's because it's a slightly indefensible position and people are on their guard. That it just makes people extremely angry and really sort of to extremes. I mean, like that chap,
the dynamic
like
of
the other
religious
chap,
zealotry. Yeah.
Like
It's
the
also-
other chap who said who's going to throw people down the stairs and laugh at them as they bounced. And I don't even know who he is. But when people said to him, actually, this is like an extraordinarily violent thing to say, he's then saying, oh God, I've had turfs on me. It's been brutal, he said. It's been brutal. All because I said, I called out people who were putting words in a dead man's mouth. And we were like, but this is obviously not the case. It was the fact that you said you'd throw what is mostly women down the stairs and laugh at them. I mean, why would anyone? And then I saw that Laurie Penny had retweeted this.
Yeah.
What makes people say these things?
Well,
I think that they're defensible.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Laurie Penny is trying to slyly kind of sidle out of womanhood now by pretending she's intersex. So,
oh my God.
So
she's
I
not
guess,
even pretending to be non-binary. She's pretending to be intersex.
Yeah, she says, I think I might have chromosomes or whatever, So,
Oh my God.
I guess that's the way that people can excuse it to themselves. Oh, I'm no longer of the sex that's being violently addressed here, so I can retweet it, But it's the thing about it is, like, Stella O'Malley gave me the concept of the Golden Bridge, which I at the time thought was great because just to explain it again, it's the art of war thing that Sun Tzu said, that if you have your enemy cornered, you must give them a golden bridge to escape across, because otherwise they'll fight to the death, And so, but I don't quite know how to give a golden bridge to people who believe that people can change sex and it's a good thing for young women to cut their breasts off.
Yeah.
I don't really know if there's a golden bridge that exists anymore, because they've invested so much energy and they've revealed themselves to be so stupid and cowardly and incoherent and to resort to things like Gaiman's thing about me when he's cornered. I just don't know if you can give them a golden bridge anymore.
You cut your losses with them. This is where you switch to the other idea, which is that if somebody's a lost cause, you argue with them for the sake of the spectators, right?
Right.
So in this case, it's like, okay, Neil Gaiman's made an absolute fool of himself. He's responsible. He's not getting a golden bridge. He's going to be humiliated very soon when this whole thing turns around, and when every single day on the news, it's going to be how this was a massive scandal,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's on him, and we don't have to worry about that anymore. We don't have to offer him a golden bridge, but we can still argue with him for the sake of spectators who aren't sure. For people who love Neil Gaiman, who are his biggest fans, who might be lured into taking his side, we can show them that he's been deadly wrong,
Yeah. I think that's coming. I mean, the kind of contortions are so extraordinary now. Like, my favorite one recently was The Guardian, not including J.K. Rowling's birthday in their list of birthdays. They made the decision to take her out, and the Times reported on it, and they said the section's editor was less than convincing in his response. Space was tight, he said. Choices. Yeah. Listen.
Her name is just so long.
Listen.
Her first name is all of 2 letters.
Choices have to be made, he said. And so they dropped the most successful author on the planet. Still, at least they found room for Dean Cain, the 1990s Superman actor, Victoria Azarenka, world number 15 in tennis, and the jazz guitarist Kenny Burrell.
That's an excellent response.
Yeah, I mean, Kath Weiner, are you not ashamed of yourself? Are you not ashamed of yourself? Dean Cain.
Honestly, that's
Cain.
funny.
Oh my God. I have to say, though, I am so happy that Helen Joyce's book exists, because it gives me this sense of profound relief that somebody has taken this argument and put it all together so that there's just something there that I can tangibly touch and feel and imagine handing to anyone I disagree with and saying, look, it's all here, crystal clear. It's been crystallized into this very concise argument, and that's so important. You know, like just for me, the sense of like, to me, it's a real sense of turning point that we have this, you know, Maya Forstatter's ruling was a massive baseline. Kira Bell's ruling was a massive baseline of change, a rung up the ladder. And Helen Joyce's book is another rung up the ladder of like, we're really solidifying our side's position. We're really, really gaining the upper hand. We're really building our fortresses. We're really advancing. I love it.
Yeah.
Yes, and also I noticed I got very excited on one page because I wasn't expecting it. She put in the populist poll that I crowdfunded for, and it's in there.
Oh, great!
Yes, it's in one of the chapters. I was like, that was great.
But the other thing, just to point out, here's how upside down the Guardian's morality is at the moment. Dean Cain is a board member of the NRA, and he's a Trump supporter. And they took J.K. Rowling out and put him in instead.
Yeah, but he's American. And remember, the Guardian is basically American. Yeah.
Well, the Guardian is basically just kind of, hoping to kiss the ass of any American that passes by because it's where their audience is now. I don't think it's selling very well, except in America, where it's considered, it's considered just the height of journalism.
It's international. It's got prestige.
Yes, but
like watching The Crown, it makes you feel so,
Listen, there's another thing I just wanted to point out. I think it's an important thing to point out, but they got Scott Nugent. They managed to get Scott Nugent thrown off Twitter.
No.
Yeah. I think that's because Morgane Oger has been targeting Scott. So I don't know what to do. I don't think there's any way we can help. But if people could raise as much of a storm as possible. Scott is a trans man who doesn't agree with this fucking anti-woman ideology that's being pushed at the moment by people like Morgane Oger. Please,
Scott needs to appeal again.
Yes.
Feminist Row came back yesterday after 2 years. 2 years of being banned. It's got to come back.
Amazing.
So it does. I think it is worth just doing the constant, because at some point somebody picks it up who is a bit more sensible than other people.
Yeah, you get a sense that there's like
how it is.
There's like an internal civil war going on. Maybe there's a backlash, and there's all these moderators, and they all get personal say on whether you get kicked off or put on. You get the right one.
That's an interesting view. I think you might be onto something there. I mean, I'll give you another example. Like Reddit at the moment. Like Reddit has a site-wide ban apparently on my Substack, and I would imagine that is almost entirely because of this very, very powerful group of pedophiles and weirdos who have kind of coalesced around Amy Challoner. These are the same people who banned the Real Lesbians group or filled it with men, banned every gender critical group. We must remember that, as Beth said, there aren't actually that many of these people. They are just fucking insane. Yes. They're aggressive as hell. Mm-hmm. But they once they can be removed from key positions, I think that you might see their influence wane a little bit.
This is so important that there's just this tiny number of people, and everybody's just so afraid to challenge this ideology because it's new and novel, and they're scared. And you just hear the same things over and over again. People saying things like, "Oh, I didn't know I was allowed to say that," that kind of thing. And then everybody's just afraid, and everybody's just jumping on the bandwagon because it makes them look virtuous. And these poor, foolish men getting so, I wouldn't say poor, I don't sympathize with them. These men who are bullies to women because they think it makes them look virtuous on this issue. It's all nonsense. It's just a small number of dangerous people, like the idea of self-ID, the idea that the definition of a trans person is somebody who's making a sincere, significant effort to try and just live their life in some semblance of the role of the opposite sex in order to alleviate whatever mental distress they have. That's a very internal, personal, trying to mind my own business kind of way of describing trans. But to take self-ID, which is, I tell you what sex I am, and you shut up and take it, and that's the law, And you don't get to ask any questions. You don't ask me why I'm doing this, because we all know why, and it ain't sympathetic, all this kind of stuff.
Oh my God,
it's just the opposite. Like sincere people who are just trying to go about their lives wouldn't endorse this kind of stuff at all. It's bad actors who are behind so much of it, you know?
Well, the proof of that is in the experience of Aaron Timberley and Scott Nugent and Book Angel, who are, as I say, currently being harassed and terrorized by a trans-identified male. So, as we pointed out on the video interview I did with them, this is very much men still harassing women, even if they're identifying as the opposite. Like Aaron identifies as a man, and you can say that I personally think that trans men like Aaron and even detransitioners like Kira Bell have a greater claim to the word trans than fucking Laurel Hubbard, you know, who is fully intact. Like I saw Posie Parker being interviewed by some guy, and he said, "No, we can call him she. He has transitioned. She has transitioned. How has she transitioned? She's got a ponytail. He has got. God, I must remember to not
I know it's so easy to just like forget.
Yeah,
it's like
he's got a fucking ponytail and a dick. That is not a woman, you know. It's outrageous that and it shows just that they don't understand what they're talking about. Because what the fuck does transitioning mean now? Does it mean anything?
That's the point. It does mean anything. It means that a declaration. Well, and again, it can be used as it's the sort of Mott and Bailey, isn't it? It can be used to say you can say transition, pretending that you mean fully transitioned, 2 years or operation, but then you can use the word trans for anyone you want, and you can use them both. You can use them interchangeably, and it muddies the water very, very purposefully, of course. But when you can argue with somebody on a specific case, and then they can say, no, trans means this. And you can say, no, look, trans means this. And they can say, no, it doesn't. And you're like, this is just gaslighting.
But it's the gaslighting that comes hand in hand with postmodern theory, because postmodern theory just completely destroys any kind of boundaries between people. And expects to make sense, and it can't.
Isn't that the idea? The postmodern theory is like if you make something undefinable, it's impossible to discriminate against it. But a corollary of that is if you make a bad thing undefinable, it's impossible to point out that it's got problems. You know?
Yes, Well, listen, not a bad thing at all is Coach Blade. How is that segue? Who joins us now? So I'm going to bring her in, and we'll continue our little chat about sport. First of all, Coach Blade, nice to see you. How are you doing?
Linda,
hey everybody, good to see you. Good to see you.
Fabulous to see you, Linda.
Hey,
Linda,
so lovely.
I'm going to do what I did with Beth and apologize that you have to fucking do this stuff. It is an absolute humiliation and an embarrassment, and I'm so sorry that men have done it to you. But I'm really glad that it's women like yourself who are heading the fight. What are you up to at these days to try and fight this nonsense?
Well, right now I'm actually on holidays in Vancouver, and I'm riding my bike and listening to the likes of people like you who are standing up. But I've also been doing my best to speak out when I have a chance on, various media, and including Twitter, of course. It's just insane how this person, Laurel Hubbard, a man who self-identifies as a woman, is in the 109 kilogram category. Like if he were a male and competing with the men, there's an extra weight category for men up on the high end. So by identifying as a woman, he gets to go into the weight category lower. So even if he were in the male section, he would have to compete up a category. So he's actually even not only just allowing himself to be, sort of having an advantage by competing with the women, but he's essentially allowing himself to step down into a different weight category, which in sports is a massive.
That is, when you put it like that,
it's a massive advantage.
God. Yeah.
It is. And we know that people, we know that this is one of the problems with categories in sport. People do try and cross, just go into that sort of slightly lighter boundary if they're right on the edge. We know that this is something that happens.
Yeah.
But I hadn't actually appreciated that this had happened in Hubbard's case. That there is so this was the highest weight category for women. So there wasn't any Gosh.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact is, nobody has mentioned, really, the only person who mentioned this is Australian Senator, the brilliant Claire Chandler, who actually, it made me really think about it as well, because it's almost exactly the same thing as what happens in Canada when you put a male person into a female, like a rapist, a man, into a woman's prison.
Yeah.
They go down.
Like security level.
So the maximum security, the security level for males is high, and then maximum security for women is equivalent with minimum for men, or medium, or somewhere. Yeah. So when they self-identify, they drop into a different security category. It's the exact same thing. They're just getting an advantage any way they can.
In Canada, there's like 4 levels of security or something for men and 3 for women. And even like the 3 for men and 3 for women, the women way lower. And even despite that, it ends at 3, whereas in men there's 4. And there are men who are in 4, who are in like you're a serial killer level of security, and they just say, "Oh, I'm a dame," and it just they immediately drop down to 3, which is really 2.
So why wouldn't they self-identify? Why wouldn't they? Who wouldn't?
Why wouldn't a prisoner do that? Why wouldn't and also, the thing that I hate, well, one of the many things I hate most about this ideology is the fact that it attracts the worst kind of men.
Yes.
Like Laurel Hubbard is obviously someone who enjoys trolling people. He enjoys cheating. He enjoys humiliating women. He has been attracted. He is the type of person who is attracted by this ideology, and those are the type of people we should be guarding most against, not raising them to the level of, as I've seen in many media reports, a hero. But they actually, I saw one report, Linda, that said
reluctant hero?
Yeah, no.
Oh my God, reluctant.
There was an even better one.
Crowds were cheering for this to happen. Like, give me a break.
There was an even better one that said that Laurel Hubbard talks about the extra pressure provided by being the first trans athlete, blah, blah, blah. So it was harder for him than it was for the women, they're arguing.
Yeah. Wow. Just wow.
Yeah.
And I guess the other question, nobody...
No,
sorry.
Sorry, go on.
I guess there's a delay. I guess the other question, and it's, I guess some people could say it's none of my business, but the other question is, who was the lucky lady in the athletes' village on Team New Zealand that got to be the roommate with this person?
They're doubled up.
Athletes' quarters are like, well, when I was on national teams and you go to these international games, you have 2 and 3 people jammed into a small room. Who are the women? Are with strong allies? Somebody just didn't want to be there and was forced to. I mean, all of these are inside the ballpark questions that maybe nobody's ever going to have the guts to answer.
Yeah. Linda, before we kind of go on, I kind of realized that, you see, I'm so used to looking at your tweets, and I've been following and enjoying your works for so long that I kind of assume everybody else knows you. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into this and what you've been doing to fight it?
Yes. Well, I became president of track and field in Alberta, the province of Alberta in Canada, in 2014. And that was with respect to my vision for building new indoor tracks and coaching improvements. And I had no idea this was on the radar at all. And so, but as part of my job as president, I have to go to national meetings. And by 2018, I was put on, since so few women are presidents of provinces in sport, in fact, so few women are in the top echelons of sport leadership, they basically just said, would you mind going on this gender committee? Okay, token woman, I guess. So I went on this committee, and I looked at the policy they were proposing, and my heart just dropped to my feet, because I mean, I have a PhD in kinesiology. I've been I was an athlete. I've been in sports coaching all my life, and in sport leadership, and looking at policy and program development. Never in my life would I dream somebody would be stupid enough to say men could go into the same category as women. And yet here I am looking at this policy proposal that is far more extreme. Keep in mind, it's far more extreme than the Olympic Games policy, even, where the Olympic Games at least requires reduction in hormones. But in Canada, the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport, which is supposed to be the anti-doping agency, suddenly took this on their, on their sleeve and decided they would be promoting this. And they're basically just saying, whatever you want to identify as, it should be your human right to go into whatever category you wish. And it doesn't have to be the same from one season to the next, or one sport to the next. So you could be a male hockey player one season and a female sprinter the next, and you could flip back and forth, because of course we all are told gender is fluid. And so what this does is give, male athletes a license to hop all over the playing field in any way they want. And the rest of us have to stand there and take it. And not only that, once they identify, then we're not allowed to say anything. That's why Claire Chandler, the archer, Claire Chandler, sorry. That's why Stephanie Barrett, the Canadian archer, and Graham, to your credit, none of us knew this until you uncovered it.
Oh yes, I heard that. I was delighted to hear that. I think it was Nutmeg who uncovered it.
Well,
tell us about Stephanie Chandler.
Congrats, because Stephanie Barrett just started archery at 35 years of age, transitioned in 2012, and Nutmeg or whoever did uncovered previous tweets of this person saying they're going through surgery and everything. So at least they did made a little more effort. But anyway, so let me just backtrack on my journey.
Let's remind people though that if you had a male adolescence, then the testosterone that's in your body gives you an advantage over women. It doesn't matter if you transition. Yeah. Full stop.
No matter what.
Yeah.
But the thing is, this is why it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult for us in Canada to police anything, because we're not even allowed to know. We're not even allowed to ask about biological sex, which contravenes in our policy in Athletics Alberta. Is that you sign up on the basis of sex and you compete on the basis of sex. We don't care about your ideology. Like, we don't ask people their religion. We don't ask people what political party they belong to. When you compete in sport, your identities and ideologies beyond your body have nothing to do with us. We don't ask you, okay, all the people with cousins, I identify as a cousin, so all the people have female cousins over here, and we have all kinds of identities. We have mother, father, I'm employed in this place. We have all kinds of identities. In sport, we put that to the side and we compete with our bodies, and the only thing that can possibly matter is biological sex. And so when I see this policy and I look around the table and I see all these guys just looking at this thing like, oh yeah, this is what we're going to do, I said, no way, are you kidding me? How can this be true? Like, what are we doing here? And there was silence, and you get this feeling of being shunned immediately, that you're saying the wrong thing, you're not supposed to say that, our funding might be in jeopardy, blah 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 blah. And so people immediately go into fear mode, and it was just a bunch of guys just willing to accept this. And I said, well, that's not right. And so that's when I went in, that was in 2018. And then, since I wasn't being heard, I tried to do it the right way. I even called the CEO of Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport, Paul Melia. I tried to talk to him. I said, what's going on here? And he kept saying, this is about safety, inclusion, and fairness. And I said, what? I said, you include a male body in women's sports. It's not safe. I mean, think about contact sports. I told him that. I said, it's not fair, and it's not inclusive. You're excluding women. No. It's safe, fairness, inclusion, equity, diversity. He kept saying these words and he wasn't listening to me at all. So then I said to him, well, listen, okay, obviously we're not getting anywhere, but please just tell me one thing. Is this the law in Canada? Because at the time I didn't even know. I said, is this the law in Canada, or is this just you and your group recommending this policy to all the sport groups in Canada? And he says, well, it's not the law yet. So when he said yet, and knowing as I did what happened with the pronouns in 2017 with, the one Jordan Peterson was talking about, and how the Liberal Party just jammed that through so fast, my heart went in, I went into a little bit of a small panic, because I thought, well, how long is it going to be before this becomes the law? And then we don't really even have a choice. And so I thought, well, immediately, this is death for women's sport either way. If I say something now and I get canceled, fine, I've had my turn in sport. But if I don't say something, it becomes a law of women's sport is dead anyway. So I felt like I was in a corner and nobody was listening to me. So that's when I went really hard on Twitter. I just started tweeting because I felt alone. And I thought, well, if I just put my thoughts out into the universe, obviously I'm going to find somebody who agrees with me. And lo and behold, I ran into Fair Play for Women. I ran into all you lovely people. And I was greatly encouraged. So I want to say thank you for that too.
Oh, well, no problem.
Can I say, genuinely, I think what you said there was sort of full of integrity. You said, you've had your shot, but you needed to do this for the women who are coming after you, and fair play to you. That's exactly how it should be. But you're doing it. We've
seen some fantastic women doing this. We've seen Sharon Davis over here has been great in not backing down at all. And other women who have had their careers and don't have to toe the line. And I was delighted again to see the moment they could, all three winners at the weightlifting showed exactly what they thought of Laurel Hubbard. By possibly the longest silence after the question about her that I've ever heard.
They did it beautifully, didn't they? They didn't actually have to say anything.
They did.
The fact that they said nothing was just, it spoke for itself. It was very, very well done. But also, it wasn't coordinated. They genuinely felt like this. They genuinely had nothing to say because, whatever they said, it wasn't going to work. They didn't want to agree, but if they disagreed, then as you said, Linda, it's very possible that they could be cancelled themselves. So saying nothing was exactly the right thing to do, I think.
There's a film. Go ahead, Linda.
And I was going to say, and shame on the IOC, International Olympic Committee, for putting those women in that position. See, here's what I find is so cowardly about it. The International Olympic Committee makes these rules and policies, and then basically they throw the athletes to the wolves, because instead of sitting there and answering the question as the leaders, as the policy they created this problem. They let Laurel Hubbard handle the blowback. I'm not feeling sorry for Laurel Hubbard, but they hide behind Laurel Hubbard. Laurel Hubbard calls them brave, puke. And then these women, these amazing athletes have to sit there and entertain that question without any assistance, and putting themselves at great risk to whether they should answer or not. And meanwhile, Rafael Dinamo from Nauru didn't even get to be there as a lifter because Laurel Hubbard is there. And so in every way, you've put women in jeopardy, socially, publicly, in so many ways, in the competition, in the dorms or whatever, and also in terms of the press conference saying the wrong thing. That's a risk. Why is that not counted as a risk? That's just as much of a risk as anything. And especially these days, and then you've excluded a young woman who was 18 years old. And I made this point yesterday to somebody who was asking that, the big deal about making the Olympics at a young age, like 18 years of age, like this young woman from Nauru who got excluded because her place was taken by Laurel Hubbard. The thing is, you learn in that context, hardly anybody succeeds in their first Olympics. The problem is because you get to the games and they're so huge, the dynamic is different. the drive time from your village to the stadium, you have to get a shuttle bus, and then you have to go to the warm-up venue, and then you have to go over here and over here. And a lot of athletes, the first time through, it's so bewildering, all these extra steps that you need to take to actually get to the stadium. And the vibe that you don't like, you just, the first time is just a learning experience with that environment. And so this young woman from Nauru is going to have to go through that experience maybe in the next 3 years from now, instead of this year, and then have another Olympic. You know, the learning curve has been delayed for this young woman because a 43-year-old man.
Yeah. That's it. Like, and there's already a wait of 4 years between each Olympics. So it's just like, three now. When I saw that it was happening, I just immediately realized what an absolute, I mean, the insult of it is, it takes my breath away sometimes.
It's beyond the pale.
It really is. Listen, we have supposedly 10 minutes left in the show, but we can go a bit long because Catherine Deves has just turned up. So let me join in. Put Catherine in the chat. Hi, Catherine. How are you doing?
Oh, hello. How are you going?
Hi.
What time is it in Australia? How late are you up?
It's 10 to 2. So I was just actually sitting there on your website, not realizing I was actually in your waiting room.
Oh, right.
Right. All good now. No, that's all good.
Catherine, like, you know, one of the things that we've seen with this is that this is a worldwide war on women that is happening in parallel in every country. Australia, much to my surprise, seems as besotted with it as everyone else. Is there a wide knowledge of what's going on? Are people beginning to fight back? What's the mood in Australia at the moment?
Well, as we suspected, the sports would really draw people in, and I think that Hubbard's done us a real favour by turning what was just a conceptual, abstract idea into a live flesh and blood issue. And we have really struggled to get media coverage on this issue. We've had success with the Murdoch press, so what we'd call the right-wing press, Sky News, the Australian newspaper. But with Hubbard competing, the media over here has exploded. And today we actually got onto the second page of the Daily Telegraph, which is a very big paper over here. We've been interviewed by a number of international media outlets like BBC, Reuters, and so on. But since Hubbard has competed, I've had that many requests for media. So that's been great. And then looking at all the commentary as well on social media, it has all been in our favour.
Right.
So, yeah, it's really been dragged into the spotlight.
I think one of the things that I notice amongst trans rights activists is that they will often simply pretend that none of this stuff is going to happen. And I think that in a wider way, the public simply hasn't been able to believe that a fully intact male, 20 years older than the other competitors, would actually be on the stage with them. But as you say, you can't deny it now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've had media here, like our state-sponsored media. I think, Linda, you have the same problem with CBC. They are just pretending. They're still pretending that this argument doesn't exist. They are still pretending that it's all very brave and stunning. And
It's true.
You know, when you saw Hubbard come onto the competitive stage, and he just barged on and pushed between those two women, you know, I was like, well, that really just says it all, isn't it? I mean.
Yeah.
And then when you saw the young competitors, as you just discussed, you know, hashtag no thank you, it was like, oh, that's, you know, they've just nailed it, haven't they?
Yeah. I like, it sounds like things are going better in Australia than they are in the UK. I don't know whether you're aware of this, Catherine or Linda, but a few days ago in the UK, or the day Laurel Hubbard competed, the BBC warned women that if they kind of put up any kind of, this is our national broadcaster, if women challenge this in any way, they would be reported to the police.
My goodness.
It was quite incredible. They wrote a sort of puff piece on Hubbard. It was, you know, the reluctant hero one. And then, they said, if the comments, we will be monitoring these comments for hate, and anything, particularly egregious, we will be reporting to the correct authorities. And you're like, honestly, but the pushback was extraordinary. I mean, they were completely ratioed. People did look at this and say, like, no, well, this is unacceptable.
Well,
I keep saying that tsunami is coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
It's out there on the horizon. It is coming.
Yeah.
And they're not going to stop it.
I think anyone who kind of has a queer theory degree should be just it should be a house cleaning of such people from every institution, like the way they cleared out Trump. They're probably clearing out Trump supporters from everywhere. There was something else I was going to say. What was it? It was about what was it? Oh yeah. Well, no. It was just the thing.
Can I say something while you're thinking?
Yeah. No,
can I say something while you're thinking?
You saved me. You saved me.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fair. Because I wanted to sneak this in about exactly 3 hours and 35 minutes. We're going to have this discussion workshop session with the McLuhan Institute, which is actually the top think tank in Canada. And they are going to reveal on that platform. I guess they did a national survey on Canadians' attitudes on this issue. And they're going to reveal the results. And so I'm really very keen to see because this is a major, like I say, Canada's major political policy think tank. And they have taken this on. And in order to try to get to the root of the truth of where everybody stands on this issue. So they have done, like I say, a wonderful job at consulting. And I suspect it's going to be very good news for us because it's going to show that most Canadians are not having it. I'm sure it's going to show that. I could be proven wrong. But I'm really looking forward to it because this could really shift, because even all of our political parties, they never want to veer away. Like you say, they're all being intimidated by this group, by this ideology. But if people could really understand how we are all mostly in agreement that this is just, there has to be boundaries and guidelines based on biological sex. And that's never going to change. We aren't going to change as a species overnight. We have biological sex, and we need to have that as the preeminent determination for many things in society, whether it's sports, prisons, anything else, shelters, rape, we need to have it. And I think this might be a turning point and open the eyes of a lot of politicians as to what is really, what the Canadians really feel about this issue.
I hope so. I would be really interested to see how the questions were phrased. Yes. Because we've had that here where people say, are you in favor of trans rights? And of course everyone says, yes, of course I am, because everyone is in favor of people having rights. But it's only if you really drill down and ask the questions, and a lot of people don't want those questions asked, of course, that you can get to the truth. So I do think
one thing leaked that One thing leaked that they did ask the question specifically about the sports, men and women's sports, and then they took the extreme group and the lowest, like the extremes on both sides, and if you just take those two, the ratio is 6-1. 6 people, 6 Canadians out of out of 7. I hope those completely think this is unfair.
Good. Well, wasn't your book the bestseller on Amazon Canada?
Yeah, it went number 1 on the first day.
People are thirsty for proper information, and despite what all your politicians and media are saying, obviously that's what the people want to hear about.
There's this sense
people
in the
are
media
desperate to learn about it because
the Canadian media just does not. There's almost the sense Canada has a sort of nanny state attitude sometimes, where the CBC feels like they know better than the masses, and if the masses are against men and women's sport, it's because the masses are the great unwashed who haven't learned and enlightened themselves like we have. So it's our job as the national broadcaster to make sure that they learn that this is the right way to think. Seems very much to be the mindset, because they very much, like Helen Joyce put so clearly, there's a distinction that doesn't make a difference. Like, you know, women not being allowed to vote while men are doesn't make sense, because there's no justifiable distinction between men and women for the purposes of voting.
Right.
But for the purposes of sport, there is a distinction there. So when you know, allowing women to vote when they were being prevented from voting is a human right improvement. Whereas erasing the distinction between men and women in sport is a human right detriment. But people have a very simplistic idea that whenever you eliminate distinctions, you're always making the world better. You know, once we erase any distinction, the world just gets better. And they just think erasing the distinction between male and female means sexism will vanish from the planet. You know, they genuinely think that. It's
right.
Yeah. I think this is the view of Amanda Palmer, Neil Gaiman's wife. I think she made her gigs more dangerous for women by making the toilets unisex, you know. So, you know, she just kind of figured out it's magical and everyone will be nice to each other, which may be true at Amanda Palmer gigs, but not many other places. Catherine, another thing, let's talk a little bit about the other kind of very revealing aspect of trans people at the Olympics, which was that natal females who were calling themselves trans played on women's teams. Wasn't there a Canadian non-binary woman or something who played on the women's team?
No, outright trans man. Yeah.
Trans man, outright trans man. Okay.
I believe she referred to herself as non-binary. So her name was Quinn on the soccer team. Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah. I mean, female athlete playing on a female team in a female sport. There is no story here. What they just cut their hair short? Is that what that is? I don't understand.
Well, it is the generation that invented cutting your hair short if you're a woman, Linda. Let's remember that. But the thing about it is,
you mean saying that doing that makes you?
Since 1980.
I'm being completely sarcastic, Linda.
Non-binary.
but isn't it revealing that this ideology empowers someone like Laurel Hubbard, and yet a woman who identifies differently gets to stay in her own sex class?
Exactly.
And I mean, it's an extraordinary bit of hypocrisy, isn't it?
Well, of course, it's usually really what it is. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I've had my turn.
Yes, Catherine, let's hear from you.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, there's no way Quinn could have competed likely in the men's if she tried out. Let's be honest. Yeah. So, I mean, she knows, she obviously, sorry, I don't even know what her pronouns are, but so obviously she realizes that's where she has to play if she wants to have a chance.
And so does everybody else.
You're supposed to say
nobody's objecting. Yeah. But nobody's objecting to this. Everybody's acknowledging that, well, of course she shouldn't be expected to play on the men's team. Are you suggesting that there's no difference between male and female bodies? That's crazy, you know?
Yeah. It just seems that this whole ideology kind of roars into power when it benefits a mediocre man like Gavin Hubbard.
Yeah, I mean, it was the director for medicine and science for the IOC, and he did say everybody knows trans women are women. He didn't add on and trans men are men and non-binary personalities are valid. He only stuck with the one of the Holy Trinity. So according to the IOC, they're the only ones that really matter.
Yeah. Well, the idea is sorry. Well, I'll just say the last thing, Linda. Like I've been reading Critical Theories, the book by James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose, and what's the other guy's name? The other guy. And
Bogosian.
Yes, and they say that
Peter.
And this is something I've heard backed up by detransitioners and trans men, that trans women are considered, in queer theory and all this kind of nonsense that's powering this ideology. Trans women are considered doubly oppressed because they're women and they're trans, so they're doubly oppressed. Whereas trans men are not as oppressed because they have male privilege. It's just extraordinary. Oh shoot! I just saw.
And so calling us.
Yeah, go on, Linda.
Are you okay?
Yeah. I'll make it.
Okay, so one of the things that I find it interesting is that even calling our stance transphobic is misogynistic because it's only focusing on the male to female. We are protecting the female athlete category for the females who are also trans. So basically, we are protecting trans men who want to play sports and not be dominated by trans women. So how can it be transphobic? We're actually protecting the trans who happen to be female in a female category. Because if it's flooded in by trans women, then there will be no more trans men or any female athletes left in the category. So you can just saying that, calling that transphobic means that you're only focusing on the male to female.
Well, that's of course is the problem with the phrase TERF. Exclusionary.
Exactly right.
Radical
We're not excluding the females who are trans.
Yeah, exactly. All women are included in their definition of feminism. So it's a slur. It only makes sense as a slur. Right. Well, I think we're coming up to an hour and 5 minutes. Let me just finish with you guys by asking. That's gender neutral, guys. By asking what can people do in Australia and Canada to help you both? Catherine, let's start with you because it's late for you and you should go to bed.
Look, we had a real win this evening. I've been trying to get a parliamentary petition up and running, which means it goes through the parliament. It can't be cancelled like everything else on change.org, etc. They rejected it at first for offensive language because I used, biologically correct terminology, and I appealed it and it's been accepted. So I know, I was so excited. So this is looking at changing legislation to protect sports for females only, and also looking at in putting a provision in that will mean that sex as a protected characteristic will always be paramount over the concept of gender identity in our sex discrimination legislation. So very important. So any Australian citizens or residents out there, even if you're overseas right now, please come and find us on Save Women's Sports and sign the petition. We've got 4 weeks to get the numbers. So that's one way people can help. Thank you.
Well, we'll put a link to that in the description to this video. So thank you so much, Catherine, for that. It's wonderful that you've done it. And Linda, anything that we can do to help on your side of things?
Yes, well, please, if you have a chance, go to the website n=8.com, the big N, and then the term equals, and then the number 8.com. There's some form letters there, some forms and templates that you can send letters to various leaders in Canada to encourage them to consider sex-based sports. And I just want to say, with respect to the McLuhan Institute seminar today, I didn't reveal all of there's many more statistics and data and stuff. So I didn't really reveal that much of it, but I think it's going to be quite revealing to the Canadian public. And so listen to them, and then in the future we may have a Fair Sport Canada or some other organization that we can start up where people can sign up and be allies, and we can start a movement to propose counter proposals to the insanity that's being pushed at all the sports organizations. So please stay tuned, stay engaged. There's going to be a lot more coming.
Great. All right. Well, listen, once again, I'm sorry you have to waste your time on this silly shit. Excuse my language.
Beautiful.
But
I love the show.
Oh, thank you. But let us know. Do come back anytime you want if there's anything new happening. But in the meantime, best of luck and congratulations on all you've done so far.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's wonderful to finally meet you, Catherine, and it's lovely to see you again, Linda.
Yeah, and get some sleep, Catherine. Good night.
Yeah, good night.
Yay.
Okay, yay. So listen, I mean, there was a lot of sports talk there. Is there anything that we didn't cover today that you'd like to do before we round up? We could do another 10 minutes, I think.
Yeah, what else is going on in the world
Well, I guess I wanted to talk a little bit more about the BBC. I was going to just move on to one aspect to that earlier, which is that the BBC, the one thing you may have noticed over the last few years is that trans rights activism destroys everything it touches. It destroyed Stonewall. It's destroying institutions. All these institutions, like the NHS, you know, are not doing their jobs because of trans rights activism, you know? And I think that people in the BBC should realise that it could well destroy the BBC. Because for the BBC to, like, the BBC just recently admitted that their Ben Hunt piece on puberty blockers was a load of crap. And on this issue, they are being consistently wrong. They're consistently having to, I mean, Ben Hunt is now doing the weather in Antarctica or something like that. You know, but they keep getting caught short by this stuff. The BBC will not be able to do its job if it keeps doing this stuff. Woman's Hour is a joke. Woman's Hour just talked about sex being assigned at birth, and they just talked about whether we should show porn to children, you know, to get them used to it. You know, so
yes,
these institutions, they're not doing their job because of this ideology.
No, I think you're right. But the pushback to the BBC actually, you know, under that article about Hubbard, you know, actually saying hate will not be tolerated here. Yes, but hate should never be tolerated, you know, in BBC articles. But they've never found the need to put it down before. This was very specifically, obviously aimed at women to shut them up. Yeah. And the pushback was enormous. And I was very pleased to say, people saying, you know, this is just, they're not fit for purpose. I don't want to pay my license fee anymore. And they would have been able to see all of this. So I'm really hoping that, you know, that force of people answering surely must have made them think, oh, God, we've done it again. We've got it wrong. And at some point, they're going to have to say, we need to change.
Well, I think there's that sense of like what's going on in Canada. It starts with them thinking they're the nanny state and they know better. And there's just people who just don't know as much as we do. But as those numbers grow, I think the British are much more amenable to thinking, oh, maybe I'm the one who's wrong and maybe they're right. Whereas in Canada, there's just this utter self-righteous arrogance that comes from the federal government. You know, this image of Canada as so goody two-shoes really stinks up our institutions and makes it harder for us to.
But it's also to do with the, like, basically the problem with trans women or women as a statement is that it is taken by some of its most passionate and crazy adherents to be literal truth. And when you say that a completely contradictory statement is literal truth, then you remove the ability for institutions all over the UK to do their job properly, right? Because the NHS is not protecting women in its ward. You know?
Oh God, no, that was awful to see. I was absolutely shocked again. But to see them say that one of the trusts had said that, did you see this, Artie? There was a report out about, but it was when they said that actually if a woman objected to a male on the ward, treatment could be witdrawn.
Treatment could be withdrawn.
Yes, that was the most shocking sentence I think that I've ever read in relation to this. It was incredible. That, you know, it's self-ID has just come in by the back door in so many places.
That you really basically deserve to die.
and someone makes a point here about the BBC. I think it's good. And thank you, Five, for this comment. I do agree in general, and I would not kind of celebrate the BBC going down. But I'll give you an example. Here's, to me, one of the most shocking things the BBC did. The BBC had, again, a fucking Laurel Hubbard type, fully intact bloke with his wife on TV, on CBeebies, mind you, and they called them a lesbian couple, right? That is lying to children. It's grooming children, and it's outrageous, and I can't pay for it. So it's the first time where I ever thought, I cannot fund, in all conscience, I cannot fund an organization that lies to toddlers and tells women they'll set the police on them if they talk about their rights. It's gone too far, you know. And what I'm hoping that someone, you know, those groups that we've been talking about today, of people who are rational, who realize that something is wrong, please God, let them start taking control of the car, because it's going to crash. It's headed for a huge crash, you know?
What is up with the, like, is it legal to not pay your license, or is it mandatory for everyone to pay?
It's mandatory if you have a TV. It's an interesting
what do they
law.
like? Does the TV inspector come with a little badge that's shaped like a TV and be like,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, license inspectors. Yeah, they're a real thing.
And they
But
search your
in fact-
house for a television?
In fact, it's one of the big reasons why women go to prison.
Yes,
But they actually
70%.
search your house for a television. They come to your house and
70%.
search your house for a television.
Yeah, well, that type of thing. 70% of women in prison, or 70% of prosecutions of women are for TV license.
Yeah.
And now those same women in prison could have a little extra punishment in that they might be raped by a man who identifies as a woman who's been allowed into the prison.
Yeah.
I mean, we have at the moment a system of silencing and punishing women that extends right from their living rooms to the worst place they could end up. It's an extraordinary moment in history. It really is. So anyway, so listen, organizations, start doing your job. Stop listening to the bloke with eyeshadow who you brought in as an intern and is now running the place, and take away his Twitter password. You need to
that's
start.
part of it, is that we're going to have to start telling people, all of these males who have come out as trans women, you know, they can't hold us emotionally hostage forever. We're stuck in the situation where every office has one, and we're going to have to turn to them, because this will not resolve unless we say, okay, here's the deal. You're actually not a woman, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it basically, we need to start from a position of objective truth, you know, because otherwise no one is going to be able to do their jobs, you know? This is going to make the bridges fall down, you know?
Yeah. So
anyway, sorry, I just kept us on for 10 minutes and then ranted at you. Is there any? I know we're running long, but I'm happy because I feel like we've missed a lot. There's been so many crazy things happening. Have you been following Chris Chan?
Oh God, it's horrifying. This person's been like apparently, I've never heard of this person, but they've been like an internet personality for 20 years. He's just been like a crazy troll. And the reason Kiwi Farms was founded was to make fun of this guy or something.
Yeah, something like that. And fair play to Kiwi Farms, which is like in many ways, because it has no rules at all. There can be a very toxic group of people on there at any one time. But you have to say, well done to them for getting this guy arrested. You know, apparently it was them. It was their work that let it happen. So you got to say fair play to them.
But did you hear that the law? It could be possible that there could be a Supreme Court challenge, because the law that he's been arrested on, this incest law, is specific to a male sexually assaulting a female.
Oh, yes.
So there could be a question of, if Chris Chan counts as a woman, there could be a constitutional challenge that a crime wasn't committed. That because he identifies as a woman, the incest law wasn't violated. So that's all speculation, and it could be, you know. But it's interesting that the mess we've gotten ourselves into, these very abstract, obscure parts of the law that no one even wants to think about, like laws about raping your mother, suddenly are like, oh my God, they could be invalidated by simply changing your pronouns, you know?
Yeah.
It's astonishing. Yeah.
It really is. I mean, and it's a kind of a frightening thing as well. Chris Chan, like, I believe that Nutmeg was telling me that some kind of internet commentators have sometimes called it the kind of focus on him and the interest in him as the quote unquote Chris Chan experiment. And I found that the most disturbing thing of all, because what we have is we have like, obviously Kiwi Farms were playing their part in experimenting on him, but there was also another experiment going on, which is the experiment of telling mentally unstable people that they are literally the opposite sex. What they created in Chris Chan was a very disturbed, very kind of isolated person who ended up doing that dreadful thing, you know. And it is an experiment, and it's not just on Chris Chan though; it's on thousands of young men around the world, you know, and young.
But it's
women.
on everyone. It's on everyone, isn't it? I mean, this is a huge amount of this. I'm sure it is power. I mean, actually, I was somebody, a friend of mine had read an article and was asking whether it's a way for the younger generation to possibly wield power over the older generation, say, especially in somewhere like in an office environment where they can sort of speak the language and say the words like intersectionality or cis or trans or non-binary, and some older members of staff might be, I'll just have to go along with it because I don't have any power here. I don't really know what's going on. And it is possibly a way of just wielding that power. And, we were going further and sort of wondering whether now this is almost a reaction to the younger generation possibly having far less financial power. And
that's interesting. Yeah.
Is this some sort of backlash, a sort of like a social, cultural power that they're trying to wrest instead?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's an interesting question, I think.
I mean, I think
you really hit the nail on the head there, 100%. Like, a lot of people have talked about how the sort of virtue is the new currency because there isn't enough money for young people anymore. Keeping up with the Joneses is about looking more virtuous and having a bigger bumper sticker on your car, But I think you're absolutely right. Another part of that is the sticking it to the older generation. In a workplace or in any environment where there's interaction between generations, the young people are trying to stick it to them by asserting that this is the new rules, this is the new way things are, and they're absolute idiots about it.
And as always, men come out on top. Any kind of mass movement that can be abused to benefit men will be.
This one's such a nakedly obvious one too, that all of the rules, like the way that the definition of male sits there. Still 3 words, adult human male, man rather, or the definition of woman is like ridiculous. The way that, all the men's kinds of cancers are not being attacked for gendered language and all the women's kinds of cancers are. It's just naked, obvious. This is just men stomping all over women. The way that a female athlete who changes her pronouns still competes among the women, but a male athlete who changes their pronouns doesn't. It's just nakedly men just being bog standard assholes,
and bog standard assholes. But I do have some sympathy for the young men who've been groomed from an early age into believing this stuff. I mean, they've been sold a fake bill of goods just like everyone else. And as you say, there's something very end of capitalism about it, because a lot of these kids go online and they're just begging for money for imaginary procedures that they're not actually going to have. I mean, is there anything more? The women are going on going on OnlyFans and making desperate money that way, and the men are identifying as women and then begging for money online. It's a really distressing thing. Perhaps there needs to be, and perhaps we should talk sometime about and get someone on to talk about it. A look at the capitalist underpinnings of all this stuff. Because one of the things that I find interesting about this whole thing is why no one is questioning something that suddenly enriches plastic surgeons and pharmaceutical companies. Surely the fact that those two are getting very, very rich out of this, surely that alone should make you think you might not be on the right side of history.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, who'd be a good person to talk to about that aspect?
I don't know. It's a good question. I wonder.
I've been trying to get Helen Steele on, who's a good left-wing firebrand. I love Helen, and she might be someone who kind of has some, but she's a bit shy, I think, and is a bit nervous.
I suspect some Americans would be good to cover that front because of the because healthcare is a free market in the United States.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
really
actually a good point. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, we'll have a think about it, and if anyone has any thoughts, please send them our way. And we've done nearly an hour and a half, so I think we've done pretty well. That was a good one. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for joining me again and joining me. I'm making it sound like it's my show.
Yes. Well, thanks for having us on again.
Thanks for being here. I don't know. What am I supposed to do? I don't even know if I am the host. I'm the one who owns the.
Well, you are. It's your channel.
Oh yeah, I guess. Oh well, there we go. So listen, make a fuss about Scott Nugent. Make a fuss to the BBC.
Yes.
Keep fighting, and we'll see you very soon.
And thanks to all you in the comments. We see you. Wonderful commenters today. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you all.